The silver tray slipped from her hands. She wasn't falling toward the floor. She was falling directly into the lap of the most dangerous man in the city. His hands caught her waist, steadied her. And then he leaned close, his breath against her ear, and whispered 5 words that would change everything. "Don't you dare leave." She should have run. Should have apologized and disappeared back into the shadows where maids belong. But Michael Rowland, the man whose name made governors sweat, was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. Like she mattered. What Rosa didn't know. His family had already destroyed hers once. And the secret he was hiding in his safe would either bind them together forever, or tear them apart in the most devastating way possible. Some falls you survive. Others consume you completely. This was about to be both. Before we continue, welcome back my beautiful family and friends. If you are hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, click subscribe and let me know in the comment section where you are watching from, because tomorrow I'll be giving you an interesting story such as this one and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The mansion breathed differently at night. Rosa knew this because she'd been breathing with it for 18 months. Matching her inhales to the creak of mahogany floors, her exhales to the whisper of silk curtains catching the breeze through windows that cost more than her annual salary. She moved through the East Wing like a ghost, and that was exactly how she preferred it. Invisible. Forgettable. Safe. Her arms ached as she balanced the silver tray. Vintage champagne flutes that probably cost more than her rent. Crystal that caught the low light from the hallway sconces and split it into tiny rainbows across her dark skin. It was 11 p.m. She should have been off 2 hours ago, but Miriam had called in sick, and Rosa needed the overtime. She always needed the overtime. Keep your head down, do your work, get your check. The mantra that had kept her employed, kept her surviving, kept her small enough not to be noticed in these halls where people like her only existed to serve. She approached the private wing, his wing, with her usual caution. Mr. Rowland never called for service this late, and she'd learned to be grateful for that. The other maids whispered about him in the kitchen. Cold, dangerous, untouchable. A man who'd built an empire on fear and controlled it with an iron fist wrapped in expensive Italian suits. Rosa had seen him exactly 4 times in 18 months. Each time, she'd kept her eyes down, finished her work, and disappeared. That was the job. That was survival. The hallway leading to his study was darker than usual. One of the sconces had burned out. She made a mental note to tell maintenance, then immediately forgot it as her foot caught the edge of the Persian rug. Time fractured. The tray tilted. Crystal sang a dangerous note. Her body lurched forward, arms flailing for balance that wasn't there. She should have hit the floor, should have crashed in a humiliating heap of broken glass and bruised dignity. Instead, she hit something solid, warm, and absolutely terrifying. Strong hands caught her waist, steadying her as she landed awkwardly across someone's lap. The tray clattered to the floor, but somehow, impossibly, the champagne flutes remained intact, rolling harmlessly across the rug. Rosa's brain stuttered, trying to process. The scent of expensive cologne, the feel of a muscled thigh beneath her, the sound of a sharp intake of breath that wasn't her own. She'd fallen onto him. "I'm so sorry, I'm so—" The words tumbled out as she tried to scramble up, mortification burning through her chest. But the hands at her waist tightened, holding her still. "Don't!" The voice was low, closer to her ear than should have been possible. "Don't you dare leave." Rosa froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she was certain he could feel it. She was perched sideways across the lap of Michael Rowland, the man whose name made grown men flinch, whose reputation painted him as something barely human. But his hands on her waist were gentle, careful, almost reverent. "Sir, I tripped. I'm sorry. Please, I'll clean up and—" she was babbling, her usual composure shattered by proximity and panic. Look at me. It wasn't a request. But it wasn't harsh either. Something in his tone made her obey before her brain could intervene. She lifted her eyes. Michael Rowland was younger than she'd thought. Maybe 35, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on Renaissance sculptures. Sharp jaw, straight nose, lips that looked cruel until you noticed the slight softness at the corners. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Deep brown, almost black, and fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like she was the only person in the world. Not invisible. Seen. "What's your name?" he asked. Rosa blinked. You don't know my name?" Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, maybe, or shame. "I'm asking." "Rosa. Rosa Morrison." He repeated it slowly, like he was tasting each syllable. "Rosa." His hands were still on her waist, thumbs resting against her ribcage through the thin fabric of her uniform. "How long have you worked here?" 18 months. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. 18 months. He said it like a confession. "And I never asked your name. You're not supposed to know our names." The words escaped before she could stop them. "I mean, people in your position don't usually." "People in my position," he interrupted softly, "are usually assholes." A shocked laugh bubbled up in her throat. She swallowed it down, but not before he'd seen it. The corner of his mouth lifted. Barely, but enough. "You should let me up," she whispered. "People will talk." "Let them." "Sir." "Michael." His eyes hadn't left hers. "When it's just us, it's Michael. When it's just us." As if there would be more moments like this. As if she wasn't a maid who'd literally fallen into his lap, and he wasn't the most powerful criminal in the city. But God help her, she didn't want to move. His hands were warm through her uniform. His presence solid and real in a way that made her realize how long it had been since anyone had touched her. Really touched her. Really touched her. Not a shoulder bump in a crowded subway or a quick handshake, but this, sustained, intentional contact that made her skin hum with dangerous awareness. What would you do if your biggest mistake became your most life-changing moment? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I really should. She tried again, but her voice lacked conviction. Stay. He said it simply, like he was asking for the most natural thing in the world. Just for a moment. Let me make sure you're not hurt. I'm not hurt. You caught me. I did. Something in his voice changed. Deepened. Why were you in this wing so late? Miriam called in sick. I took her shift. You're always taking extra shifts. It wasn't a question. Why? Rosa stiffened. How did he know that? I have responsibilities. A family. A sister. The words came out clipped. She's 12. Just me and her. Understanding flooded his expression. Your parents. Gone. She didn't elaborate. Couldn't. The wound was still too fresh, even though it had been 3 years. His hand moved, just slightly, his thumb tracing a small circle against her side. The gesture was so gentle it made her throat tight. You take care of her alone, he said. I don't need pity. I'm not offering pity. His eyes held hers. I'm offering respect. Survival takes strength. Something in her chest cracked open. When was the last time someone had called her strong? When was the last time someone had looked at her like she was more than a uniform, more than a means to an end? I need to go, she said, but she still hadn't moved. I know. But his hands didn't release her. They stayed like that, frozen in a moment that couldn't last, shouldn't exist. The clock on his desk ticked toward midnight. Somewhere in the house, a door closed. The real world waited just beyond this room, ready to remind them of all the reasons this was impossible. Finally, Michael's hands loosened. Carefully, he murmured, helping her stand. Rosa's legs wobbled as she found her footing. She smoothed down her uniform with shaking hands, hyper-aware of his eyes following every movement. She bent to collect the tray and glasses, keeping her gaze fixed on the task. "Leave them," he said. "It's my job." "Rosa." The way he said her name stopped her. "Leave them. Go home. Get some rest." She straightened, tray in hand anyway. Pride wouldn't let her leave a mess. "Thank you for catching me." "It was my pleasure." The words were formal, but his voice carried something else. Something that made heat crawl up her neck. She walked to the door on unsteady legs, feeling his gaze on her back like a physical touch. Her hand was on the doorknob when his voice stopped her. "Rosa." She looked back. Michael stood now, hands in his pockets, looking every inch the powerful man he was. But his eyes held something raw, uncertain. "I'll see you again," he said. Not a question. A promise. She should have said something professional. Should have nodded and left. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "Yes." And then she was in the hallway, heart racing, the memory of his hands on her waist burning like a brand. Behind her, she heard him exhale, long and shaky, like he'd been holding his breath. Rosa made it to the staff quarters before her legs gave out. She sank onto her narrow bed, still in her uniform, and pressed her hands to her face. What the hell had just happened? Her phone buzzed, a text from her sister Kira. "You working late again? Saw your light was still off. Love you. Don't work too hard." Rosa smiled despite everything. This was why. Kira was why she took every shift, every extra hour, why she stayed invisible and small. Because her baby sister deserved better than the hand life had dealt them. But as she lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, all she could feel were Michael's hands on her waist. All she could hear was his voice saying her name like it mattered. Like she mattered. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Rosa didn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, replaying the fall frame by frame. The catch, the hands, the way Michael had looked at her like she was something precious instead of someone who scrubbed his floors. At 4 a.m., she gave up, showered in the communal bathroom, and dressed in her spare uniform. The fabric felt different against her skin now, like it carried the memory of his touch. She reported to the kitchen at 6, earlier than her shift required. Cook gave her a strange look but said nothing, just handed her coffee that tasted like burnt hope and yesterday's grounds. "You look tired," Rosa commented, the older woman's eyes too knowing. Rosa had worked at the estate for 20 years. She saw everything. "Couldn't sleep," Rosa said, which was true enough. Rosa's wooden spoon scraped the bottom of a pot with rhythmic precision. "Word is you had an accident in the East Wing last night." Rosa's hand froze on her coffee cup. "I dropped a tray. Clumsy. That's all. That's all." Rosa studied her for a long moment, then returned to her stirring. "Be careful, Mija. Men like him, they take what they want and don't think about the cost. Not to them. To you." The warning sat heavy in Rosa's stomach as she collected her cleaning supplies. She'd requested assignment to the West Wing, far from his private quarters. She needed distance. Needed to remember who she was and who he was, and all the reasons last night couldn't mean anything. But at 10 a.m., Mrs. Loveth found her polishing silver in the dining room. "Mr. Rowland wants his office cleaned," the head housekeeper said, her expression neutral. "He specifically requested you." Rosa's heart kicked against her ribs. "There are 3 other maids available." "He requested you, Morrison." Now. The walk to his office felt like a march to execution. Rosa's palms sweated inside her cleaning gloves. She paused outside his door, took 3 steadying breaths, then knocked. "Enter." His voice. Just one word and her body remembered everything. The warmth of his lap, the careful pressure of his hands, the way he'd said her name. She pushed the door open. Michael sat behind his desk, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, turning him into a silhouette of sharp angles and controlled power. He wore a black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with scars that told stories she'd never be brave enough to ask about. "Rosa." He stood immediately, a gesture of respect that made her uncomfortable. Bosses didn't stand for maids. "Come in. Close the door." She obeyed, though every instinct screamed that closing doors with dangerous men was how girls like her disappeared. But she'd looked into his eyes last night. She'd felt the gentleness in his hands. Some part of her, the stupid, hopeful part she tried to keep buried, trusted him. "Your office doesn't need cleaning, sir," she said, keeping her voice professional. "It's spotless." "I know." He moved around the desk, leaning against its edge. Closer now, close enough that she could smell cedar and something darker. Whiskey, maybe, or smoke. "I lied." Her breath caught. "Why?" "Because you've been avoiding me." His eyes locked on hers. "You requested a different wing." "I didn't think." She stopped, regrouped. "Last night was an accident. It shouldn't have happened." "No," he agreed. "It shouldn't have." Relief and disappointment warred in her chest. "Then we understand each other." "We don't." He pushed off the desk, taking a step toward her. She held her ground, though everything in her wanted to flee. "Because an accident is something you regret. Something you want to undo. Another step." "I don't regret catching you, Rosa. I regret letting you go." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You can't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because," she gestured between them, at the impossible distance of class and power and reality. "Because you're you and I'm." "What?" His voice dropped dangerously low. "Say it." "I clean your toilets." The words burst out, raw and honest. "I'm nobody. I'm invisible. You're not supposed to even know my name, let alone—" She couldn't finish. Couldn't voice the thing hovering between them. "You think you're invisible?" He was close now, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Rosa, you're the only thing I've been able to see for 12 hours straight." Her hands trembled. She clutched her cleaning supplies tighter, using them like a shield. "This can't happen." "What can't happen?" He was playing with her, making her say it. "Whatever you think last night was. Tell me what you think it was." His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not touching, giving her the choice. "Tell me you didn't feel it too." She should lie. Should protect herself. Should remember that men like him collected women like trophies and discarded them just as easily. Rosa's warning echoed in her head. But his eyes held something she recognized. Loneliness. The same aching solitude she saw in her own mirror every morning. "I felt it," she whispered, the admission costing her. "But feeling something doesn't make it possible." "Why not?" "Because you live in a world where people like me don't exist except to serve. Because this, whatever this is, has an expiration date built in. Because when you're done, I'm the one who loses everything." Pain flashed across his face. "You think I'd hurt you. I think you'd destroy me." The truth hung between them. "Not on purpose. But men like you don't understand what it's like to have nothing. I can't afford to lose my job. Can't afford to be the subject of gossip. Can't afford to be stupid enough to believe." She cut herself off. "Believe what?" "That you could actually want someone like me. The silence stretched thin and dangerous. Michael's jaw worked like he was grinding down words too sharp to speak. When he finally did, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Come here, sir. Michael." An edge of command. "And it's not a request." Rosa's feet moved before her brain could object. 3 steps brought her directly in front of him. He was taller than she'd realized. She barely reached his shoulder. This close, she could see the faint lines around his eyes, the slight imperfection of a nose that had been broken at least once, the way his pulse jumped at his throat. He was nervous. The realization stunned her. Michael Rowland, the man who made governors sweat, was nervous talking to her. "Give me your hand," he said softly. She set down her cleaning supplies and extended her right hand, still gloved. He shook his head. "Take off the glove." Her hands were rough from work, cracked skin, short nails, calluses from scrubbing and carrying and surviving. She wanted to hide them. But something in his expression made her peel off the glove. Michael took her hand in both of his. His palms were warm, slightly rough. Working hands, despite the wealth. He turned her hand over, studying it like it was something sacred. "You see this?" He traced the callus at the base of her thumb. "This is strength. This." His finger followed a small scar across her knuckles. "Is survival. And this." He pressed his palm flat against hers, fingers interlacing. "Is what I want. Not a fantasy. Not an idea. You." Tears burned behind Rosa's eyes. No one had ever touched her like this, like she was worth careful attention, like her scars were badges instead of shame. "You don't know me," she managed. "Then let me." His other hand came up, fingertips barely grazing her jaw. "Let me know you. The real you. Not the uniform, not the role. You." "Why?" The word broke. "Why me?" Michael's thumb brushed her cheekbone, catching a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Because last night, for the first time in 10 years, I felt something other than empty. Because you looked at me like I was human instead of a monster. Because—" his voice roughened. "Because when I close my eyes, all I see is you." Rosa's breath shuddered out. This was insane. Impossible. Every logical part of her brain screamed warnings. But her heart, that stupid hopeful organ, was reaching toward him like a flower toward sun. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good." His forehead nearly touched hers. "I'm terrified." "You?" "You're not afraid of anything. I'm afraid of this." His hand tightened on hers. "I'm afraid of how much I want you. I'm afraid of hurting you. I'm afraid that for the first time in my life, I've found something I can't control and won't survive losing." The air between them crackled with tension. Rosa could feel his breath on her lips, could count his heartbeats through their joined hands. One of them needed to be smart. One of them needed to walk away. "If we do this," she whispered, "if we even try, people will talk. I could lose my job. My sister needs. I'll take care of it." Fierce. "I'll take care of you. Both of you. Whatever you need." "No." She pulled back slightly, needing him to understand. "I don't want your money. I don't want to be taken care of. I want—" she struggled for words. "I want to be seen. Just seen." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Then let me see you. Really see you. Have dinner with me. Tonight. Not here. Somewhere neutral. A date." The concept felt foreign. "Is that so impossible?" "Yes," she said honestly. "You're Michael Rowland. I'm Rosa Morrison from the South Side. We don't exist in the same universe. Then let's create a new one." His hand cupped her face fully now, thumb tracing her bottom lip. Just for us. Just for tonight. Let me prove I'm not who you think I am. Rosa closed her eyes, feeling the war inside her. Logic versus longing. Safety versus the terrifying possibility of something real. One dinner, she heard herself say. But we do this right. You pick me up at my place. You meet my sister. You see my real life, not the version you imagine. Michael's smile was slow and devastating. Deal. And if this goes wrong, if you hurt her or use your power to. I won't. He said it with absolute certainty. On my life, Rosa. I won't. She believed him. God help her, she believed him. I finish at 6, she said. I'll be there at 7. Text me your address. He pulled a card from his pocket. Personal number handwritten on the back. Rosa took it with shaking fingers. This is crazy. Probably. His eyes sparkled with something she'd never seen in them before. Hope. But it's the best kind of crazy. She stepped back, reclaiming her space, her breath, her sanity. I should actually clean something. Mrs. Loveth will wonder. Rosa. He caught her wrist gently. Thank you. For what? For saying yes. For giving me a chance. He paused, vulnerable. For not running. She looked down at where his fingers circled her wrist, then back to his face. I'm still terrified. Me too. And somehow that made it bearable. Rosa grabbed her cleaning supplies and left before she could change her mind. But at the door she looked back. Michael stood in the shaft of sunlight, watching her like she was something miraculous. 7 o'clock, she confirmed. I'll be there at 6:55. She smiled despite herself. Don't be late. Wouldn't dream of it. Rosa walked back to the service quarters in a daze. She had a date. With Michael Rowland. A man who could probably buy and sell her entire neighborhood. A man who'd looked at her rough hands like they were art. Rosa was waiting in the hallway, arms crossed. You were in there a long time. He likes things detailed, Rosa said, the lie smooth. Rosa didn't believe her. Just remember what I said, Mija. Be careful. I will. But as Rosa changed out of her uniform at the end of her shift, as she rode the bus home to her tiny apartment where Kira waited, she knew it was already too late for careful. She was falling. And for the first time in 3 years of just surviving, she wanted to see where she'd land. Rosa stood in front of her closet, if the narrow alcove with a hanging rod could be called that, staring at 5 hanging items that constituted her going-out wardrobe, which was generous. 3 were work uniforms. 1 was a faded sundress she wore to Kira's school events. The last was a black dress she'd bought at a thrift store 2 years ago for a funeral and never worn again. That one. Kira sat cross-legged on Rosa's bed. Homework abandoned. At 12, her sister had their mother's eyes, warm brown and too knowing, and a smile that could still make Rosa believe the world wasn't entirely broken. It's a funeral dress. It's a dress. There's a difference. Kira tilted her head, studying Rosa with unnerving focus. You're really nervous. Like, really nervous. Who is this guy? Rosa pulled the black dress off its hanger, avoiding her sister's eyes. Just someone from work. Someone from work who has you trying on clothes at 6:30? Someone from work who made you check your phone 17 times since you got home. Have you been counting? I'm observant. Kira grinned. It's genetic. So who is he? Wait. Is it that hot security guard? The one with the... It's not Raphael. And you shouldn't be calling men hot. You're 12. I have eyes, Rosa. They work. Kira's expression softened. You never go on dates. Like, ever. This must be someone special. Special. Dangerous. Impossible. All of the above. He's. Rosa searched for words that wouldn't send her baby sister into panic mode. He's different. And before you ask, yes, he's safe. Yes, I'm being careful. And yes, you get to meet him. Kira's eyes went wide. He's coming here? To meet me? On a first date. I told him that was the condition. Whoa. Kira processed this. Okay, he just scored major points. Guys don't usually want to meet the family until like, date 5. Or never. She paused. Does he know about? He knows you exist. He knows you're my priority. Rosa sat beside her sister, taking her small hand. That doesn't change, Kira. Ever. No matter what happens with anyone. Kira squeezed back. I know. But Rosa, you deserve to be happy too. You've been taking care of me for 3 years. You're allowed to have a life. The words hit harder than expected. Rosa blinked back sudden tears. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. A knock at the door made them both jump. Rosa checked her phone. 6:47. He was early. Go answer it. Kira hissed, shoving her toward the door. I'll hide in the bedroom and spy. You will not. Another knock. Firmer this time. Rosa smoothed down her dress. She changed quickly while Kira wasn't looking, and opened the door. Michael Rowland stood in the hallway of her run-down apartment building looking like he'd stepped out of a different dimension. Dark jeans that probably cost more than her rent. A charcoal button-down with the sleeves rolled up. No tie. Hair slightly less controlled than at the estate. He held a bouquet of sunflowers. Not roses, she noticed. Sunflowers. Bright and unpretentious and somehow exactly right. But it was his face that stopped her breath. He looked nervous. Actually, genuinely nervous. Hi, he said, and his voice carried that same uncertainty. I'm early. I know. I was sitting in my car for 10 minutes trying not to be that guy who shows up early, but then I thought being late would be worse, so he stopped himself. I'm rambling. I don't ramble. A laugh bubbled up in Rosa's throat. This was Michael Rowland, feared by half the city, rambling on her doorstep like a teenager. You brought sunflowers, she said. You strike me as a sunflower person. Roses felt too expected. He extended them. Was I wrong? She took the bouquet, fingers brushing his. You were right. His smile was devastating. Good. That's good. Are you going to invite him in or just make him stand in the hallway? Kira's voice called from inside. Because Mrs. Loveth from 3B is totally watching through her peephole. Michael's eyebrows rose. Your sister. My sister. Rosa stepped aside. Fair warning. She has no filter and approximately 2,000 questions. I can handle questions. He entered, and Rosa watched him take in their tiny apartment. The sagging couch they'd found on the street, the card table that served as dining room, the kitchen that was really just a hot plate and a mini fridge. No judgment crossed his face. Just careful observation. Kira emerged from the bedroom, arms crossed, chin up. She'd inherited their mother's fierce protectiveness along with her eyes. So you're the mysterious date. Michael extended his hand formally. Michael. You must be Kira. Rosa talks about you constantly. Kira shook his hand. Eyes narrowed in assessment. She does? What did she say? That you're brilliant. That you want to be a marine biologist. That you're the reason she works as hard as she does. He spoke directly to Kira, not over her or around her. She's very proud of you. Kira shot Rosa a look. Okay, I like him, before returning her attention to Michael. What are your intentions with my sister? Kira. Rosa's face burned. What? It's a legitimate question. Kira planted herself between them. She doesn't date. Like, ever. So if you're just playing around or... I'm not. Michael's voice was serious. He lowered himself to one knee, meeting Kira at eye level. Your sister is the most remarkable person I've met in a very long time. My intention is to take her to dinner, to get to know her better, and to prove that I'm worthy of her time. And if I'm ever not, if I ever hurt her or disrespect her, you have my permission to hunt me down. Kira studied him for a long moment. Then, do you have security clearance? Excuse me. Like bodyguards and stuff. Because Rosa said you work in... What was it? Import-export? The air quotes were pointed. Rosa's stomach dropped. She'd been vague about Michael's actual position, but Kira was smart. Too smart. Michael didn't flinch. I do have security. My work can be... complicated. But I promise you, Kira, your sister is safe with me. Safer than she'd be anywhere else. That's not a yes or no answer. You're right. It's not. He held Kira's gaze. Some things are better discussed when you're older. But I'll never lie to you, and I'll never put your sister in danger. That's a promise. Kira processed this, then nodded slowly. Okay. But if she comes home crying, I know people. Michael's lips twitched. You know people? I'm 12, not stupid. I have friends with older brothers. She turned to Rosa. He's okay. You can go. Thank you for your blessing, Your Majesty, Rosa said dryly. Kira grinned, then grabbed her backpack. I'm going to Destiny's for our group project. We're sleeping over. Her mom already said yes and she's texting you confirmation now. Her phone buzzed right on cue. See? So you two have fun, be safe, use protection. Kira. What? Miss Chen said it in health class. Kira was already at the door. She paused, looking back at Michael. Take care of her. She never takes care of herself. I will, he promised. And then they were alone. Rosa pressed her hands to her face. I'm so sorry. She's perfect. Michael stood, brushing off his knee. She's protective and smart and exactly what you need. Don't apologize for that. Rosa lowered her hands. You really got down on your knee to talk to a 12-year-old. She deserved to be taken seriously. Something in Rosa's chest cracked open wider. She grabbed her purse, a worn crossbody that had seen better years, and moved toward the door. But Michael caught her hand. Wait. Before we go. He looked uncertain again. I need you to know something. I asked around today. About you. Rosa's blood chilled. You investigated me? No. I asked Rosa about protocol, about whether it was appropriate for me to ask you out. I didn't want you to lose your job or face retaliation from other staff. He took a breath. She told me that if this goes badly, you're the one who pays the price. Not me. And she's right. I know that. So I'm offering you an out. Right now. Before we leave this apartment. His thumb traced circles on her palm. If you want to walk away, if this feels like too much risk, I'll respect that. I'll make sure your job is secure, that no one bothers you. We can pretend last night never happened. Rosa studied their joined hands. His were large, scarred, capable of violence. She knew his reputation. But they held hers like she was something breakable. Something precious. Do you want the out? She asked quietly. God, no. The words were immediate, fervent. I want this more than I've wanted anything in years. But I'm not the one taking the real risk here. He was right. If this went wrong, he'd move on. She'd be the cautionary tale whispered in kitchens, the maid who thought she could catch a boss, who got used and discarded. But she thought about the way he'd looked at her in his office. The way he'd said her name like it mattered. The way he'd spoken to Kira with genuine respect. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. People will talk. Let them. I could lose everything. I won't let that happen. His hand tightened on hers. Rosa, I can't promise this will be easy. I can't promise there won't be complications. But I can promise I'll protect you. And I can promise that whatever this is between us, it's real. At least for me. Rosa looked up at him. This man who shouldn't want her, who made no logical sense, who represented every risk her practical brain screamed to avoid. One dinner, she said finally. Let's start with one dinner. The relief on his face was palpable. One dinner. I can work with that. They left the apartment building to find a sleek black car waiting. Not a limousine, thankfully, but still nicer than anything Rosa had ever been in. A driver stood by the rear door. This is Marco, Michael introduced. He's discreet. Marco nodded to Rosa with professional courtesy, opening her door. She slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her couch. Michael climbed in beside her, maintaining careful distance. There's a place about 20 minutes from here. Italian. Small. Family-owned. I thought. Not somewhere fancy? Rosa couldn't help asking. Would you be comfortable somewhere fancy? The question was gentle, understanding. Honestly? No. Then we go somewhere you'll actually enjoy the food instead of worrying about which fork to use. He smiled. Besides, the fancy places have terrible pasta. This place? The chef is from my grandmother's village. Her carbonara will change your life. Rosa relaxed slightly. You really thought this through. I've been thinking about this for 16 hours straight. He shifted, angling toward her. Rosa, I need to say something else. About my work. Her stomach tightened. Okay. You called it import-export earlier. That's partially accurate. He chose words carefully. My family has business interests that aren't always strictly legal. I won't lie to you about that. But I keep that world separate. What I'm building now is legitimate. Real estate, investments, restaurants. I'm trying to. He stopped, regrouped. I'm trying to be better than what I inherited. Are you asking me if I can accept who you are? I'm telling you who I am. What you accept is your choice. Rosa thought about her own life, the corner she'd cut, the rules she'd bent to keep her and Kira afloat. Who was she to judge? I'm not naive, she said quietly. I know men like you don't get power by being nice. But what I need to know is, will your world ever touch mine? Will it ever touch Kira? No. Absolute. I keep my business separate from my personal life. Always. And anyone who knows me knows that family, even potential family, is untouchable. Potential family. The words hung between them. Too big for a first date. That's a lot of assumption for one dinner, Rosa said, trying to lighten the weight. Michael's expression softened. You're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just eat good pasta and talk. No pressure. No expectations. Just us. Just us, Rosa echoed, and allowed herself to smile. The restaurant was exactly as promised. Small, warm, smelling of garlic and tomatoes and fresh bread. The owner greeted Michael with genuine affection, ushered them to a quiet corner table, and within minutes, Plates appeared that made Rosa's mouth water. "So," Michael said, twirling pasta. "Tell me about you. The real you. Not the version that survives, the version that dreams." And slowly, carefully, Rosa began to talk. About her parents, her father's laugh, her mother's strength. About losing them in the car accident. About becoming a mother to Kira at 19. About dreams she'd shelved. College, travel, a life beyond survival. Michael listened like every word mattered. Asked questions that showed he was really hearing her, not just waiting for his turn to speak. And when he shared about growing up in his family, about the pressure to be what everyone expected, about the loneliness of power, Rosa heard the same ache she carried. Different circumstances. Same hunger for connection. By the time dessert arrived, Rosa had almost forgotten to be scared. Almost. Have you ever taken a risk on something that terrified you? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. The rain started as they left the restaurant. Not a gentle drizzle but a sudden downpour that turned the street into a river within seconds. Michael pulled off his jacket, holding it over Rosa's head as they ran for the car, both of them laughing breathlessly by the time Marco opened the door. They tumbled into the back seat, soaked despite Michael's efforts. Rosa's hair had escaped its careful bun, water dripping down her neck. Michael's shirt clung to his chest, revealing the muscular frame he usually kept hidden under expensive tailoring. "Well," Rosa said, wringing out a section of her dress, "so much for looking presentable." "You look—" Michael stopped himself, but his eyes said what his mouth didn't. "Beautiful. Radiant. Perfect." Marco turned from the driver's seat. "Boss, we have a problem. Flash flood warnings just came through. The bridge to the south side is closed. Water's too high." Rosa's stomach dropped. "Closed? For how long?" "At least 2 hours, maybe more. They're monitoring the water levels." She pulled out her phone. 3 missed texts from Kira, all sent from Destiny's mom's phone. "Hey, it's Destiny's mom. Just saw the flood warning. Kira's safe here. Don't worry about rushing back. Roads are dangerous. Stay wherever you are until it clears. Kay, she says to tell you she's fine and not to worry. We have plenty of food and the sleepover was already planned. Kay, stay safe. Kira says her sister worries too much, but that's why she loves you." Red heart. Relief and anxiety warred in Rosa's chest. Kira was safe. But she was trapped in a car with Michael, unable to go home, the rain hammering the roof like a countdown to something inevitable. "My apartment is 10 minutes from here," Michael said quietly. "You can wait there until the road's clear. Guest room. Separate space. No pressure." Rosa's mind raced. Going to his apartment was a line. Not the final line, but a significant one. It meant trust. It meant vulnerability. It meant admitting this was more than just dinner. But the alternative was sitting in the car for 2 hours, or finding a 24-hour diner to wait in. "Guest room," she confirmed. "Guest room," he promised. Marco drove them through streets turned into canals, windshield wipers working overtime. The city looked different in the storm, vulnerable, stripped of its usual shine. Like seeing someone without their armor. Michael's building rose like a monument to wealth, all glass and steel and doormen who snapped to attention when they arrived. He led her through a lobby that looked like a modern art museum, into a private elevator that required a keycard. "Penthouse," Rosa said, not quite a question. "Penthouse," he confirmed, looking almost apologetic. The elevator ride was silent except for the hum of machinery and the drum of water against glass. Rosa caught their reflection, her in her damp thrift store dress, him in his wet shirt, both of them looking like they'd survived something. The elevator opened directly into his apartment. Rosa stepped out and stopped breathing. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city spread below like jeweled silk, rain streaking the glass in patterns that caught the light. The space was open, modern, but warmer than she'd expected. Dark wood floors, comfortable furniture, art that looked chosen for meaning rather than investment. Books everywhere. Actual, physical books lining shelves, stacked on tables, marked with worn spines that said they'd been read and reread. "You read," she said, surprised. "Obsessively." Michael moved past her, flipping on soft lights. "Drives my security team crazy. I stay up until 3 a.m. with a novel and refuse to answer the phone." It was such a normal detail, so at odds with his reputation, that Rosa felt something in her chest loosen. "Let me get you dry clothes," he said. "The guest room has its own bathroom. Take your time." He disappeared down a hallway, leaving Rosa alone in this space that felt both intimidating and somehow intimate. She moved to the windows, watching rain batter the city. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating everything in stark white. How had she gotten here? 48 hours ago, she was invisible. Now she stood in Michael Rowland's penthouse, wearing his world like an ill-fitting coat. "Here." His voice made her turn. He held a stack of clothes, soft gray sweatpants, a black t-shirt, thick socks. "They'll be too big, but they're clean and dry. Guest room's the second door on the right. Take a hot shower, you're shivering." She was. The air conditioning had turned her damp dress into an ice sheet. Rosa took the clothes, fingers brushing his. "Thank you, Rosa." He caught her wrist gently. "You're safe here. I meant what I said. No pressure. No expectations. Just warmth and shelter until you can get home safely." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and headed for the guest room. The bathroom was larger than her bedroom. All marble and soft lighting and a shower with more settings than her TV remote. Rosa peeled off her wet dress, stepped under water that felt like heaven, and let herself breathe. This was temporary. A storm delay. Nothing more. But as she dried off and pulled on Michael's clothes, soft fabric that smelled like cedar and something distinctly him, she couldn't deny the intimacy of it. Wearing his clothes. In his space. The barriers between them dissolving with every passing moment. She found him in the kitchen when she emerged, hair damp and curling, swimming in fabric 3 sizes too large. He'd changed too. Dry jeans and a Henley that somehow made him look younger, more accessible. "Hot chocolate." He held up a mug. "I know it's summer, but you looked cold. You make hot chocolate?" The image didn't fit. "My nana's recipe." She said hot chocolate fixes everything from heartbreak to thunderstorms. He poured from a pot on the stove, real chocolate, not powder, with cinnamon and something else she couldn't identify. She was usually right. Rosa accepted the mug, wrapping both hands around it. The first sip was transcendent, rich and complex and comforting in a way that made her throat tight. "Your grandmother taught you well." "She taught me everything that matters." He leaned against the counter, his own mug cradled carefully. How to treat people with dignity. How to keep your word. How to choose honor over convenience. His eyes found hers. How to recognize something rare when you find it. The air shifted, charged with something more than the storm outside. "Michael," Rosa started, but thunder cracked so loud it rattled the windows, cutting her off. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Darkness swallowed them. Rosa's breath caught. "It's okay." His voice came from the dark, steady and calm. "Building generator will kick in any second." He was right. Emergency lights flickered on, softer than the regular lighting, casting everything in amber shadows. But the storm intensified, rain hammering the windows with renewed violence. "That doesn't sound good," Rosa murmured. Michael pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly. His expression darkened. The flood warning's been upgraded. Bridge closure extended to at least 6 hours. Maybe more. 6 hours. It was already past 10. That meant staying until at least 4 in the morning. "I can sleep on your couch," Rosa said quickly. "I don't want to impose. The guest bed is yours." "I'll take the couch." He set down his phone. "Rosa, I know this isn't ideal. I know being trapped here probably feels." "I don't feel trapped." The word surprised her as much as him. This should terrify me. Being alone with you in your space, unable to leave." "But," she met his eyes across the amber-lit kitchen. "I don't feel trapped." "Is that crazy?" "If it is, we're both crazy." He set down his mug, moving closer but stopping just outside her personal space. "Because I should be terrified too. Of how much I want you to stay. Of how right it feels having you here. Of how empty this place is going to feel when you're gone." Lightning flashed, illuminating his face in sharp relief. The angles, the shadows, the raw honesty in his expression. "We barely know each other," Rosa whispered. "I know. But tell me you don't feel it too." "This," he gestured between them, frustrated by the inadequacy of words. "This connection. Like we're two pieces that didn't know they were incomplete until we crashed together." She did feel it. God help her, she felt it like gravity. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of me. Of this. Of how fast it's happening. Of how much I want." She stopped, the confession too vulnerable. "What?" He moved closer, entering her space slowly, giving her time to retreat. "What do you want, Rosa?" "Something I can't afford to want." Her voice broke. "You. This. A life where I'm not just surviving but actually living." Michael's hand came up, cupping her face with devastating gentleness. "Then take it. Take this moment. Take tonight. No promises. No future we can't predict. Just." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Just now." Rosa's breath shuddered. The mug trembled in her hands. Michael took it carefully, setting it aside, then returned his attention to her like she was the only thing that existed. "One night?" she asked. "However many you'll give me." The storm raged outside. The city disappeared behind sheets of rain. And in the amber emergency lighting of his kitchen, Rosa made a choice. She leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and pressed her lips to his. Michael went still, just for a heartbeat, then his hands framed her face and he kissed her back with an intensity that stole her breath. Not aggressive, but present. Completely, overwhelmingly present. Rosa's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, turned desperate. She tasted chocolate and promise and the dangerous sweetness of letting herself want something. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Michael rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since you fell into my lap," he confessed. "Took you long enough." Her smile was shaky but real. He laughed, a sound she'd never heard from him before. "Open. Unguarded. Young. Come on." He took her hand, leading her to the living room. "Let's watch the storm." They settled on his massive couch, her tucked against his side, his arm around her shoulders, both of them watching lightning paint the sky. The position was intimate but not threatening. Comfortable in a way that scared her with its rightness. "Tell me something nobody knows about you," Rosa said into the comfortable silence. Michael was quiet for a moment. "I'm afraid of dying alone." "Not the dying part. I made peace with that possibility years ago. But the alone part. The idea that I'll leave this world and no one will genuinely mourn me. That I'll be remembered as a name, a reputation, but not as a person. The confession was so raw, so honest, that tears pricked Rosa's eyes. I'm afraid I'll never be anything more than what I am right now, she offered in return. That I'll work myself to death keeping Kira afloat, and when she's grown and gone, I'll look back and realize I forgot to build a life for myself. Then let's make a deal. His arm tightened around her. Tonight, we're not those people. We're not the feared boss or the invisible maid. We're just Michael and Rosa, watching a storm and pretending the world can't touch us. Just for tonight, she agreed. Just for tonight. They stayed like that for hours, talking, laughing, sharing stories they'd never told anyone else. The storm raged, but inside his apartment, they built something fragile and precious. And when Rosa's eyes finally grew heavy, when her head dropped to his shoulder and her breathing evened out in sleep, Michael didn't move. He held her carefully, watching her face in the amber light, and let himself imagine, just for a moment, that this could be more than one night. That maybe, impossibly, she could be his forever. Outside, the storm began to break. But inside, something new was just beginning to form. Rosa woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the disorienting realization that she wasn't in her bed. Michael's couch. Michael's apartment. Michael's arms still wrapped around her waist. She'd fallen asleep on him. And he'd let her. Rosa shifted slightly, trying not to wake him, but his eyes opened immediately, alert in a way that spoke of years training himself to never be fully vulnerable, even in sleep. "Morning," he said, voice rough with sleep. "How'd you sleep?" "Better than I have in months." The admission slipped out before she could stop it. Something warm flickered in his eyes. "The bridge reopened an hour ago. I checked. But I didn't want to wake you." "You should've. I need to get back to Kira. I texted Destiny's mom from your phone. Hope that's okay." He sat up, running a hand through sleep-mussed hair. "Told her you were safe and would be back by 10. It's 8:30 now. Plenty of time." The casual intimacy of him texting from her phone should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like care. Like someone anticipating her needs before she voiced them. "Thank you," she said softly. "Breakfast." He stood, stretching. "I make a mean omelet. Or we can order in, whatever you want." "You don't have staff here?" The question came out before she could stop it. "Someone to cook and clean?" Michael's expression shifted, something vulnerable crossing his features. "No. This is my private space. The only place I don't have to perform." He met her eyes. "The only place I can be just me." And he'd brought her here. Shared this sanctuary. The weight of that trust settled over Rosa like a blanket. "Then I'd love an omelet," she said. "But I help." They moved into the kitchen together, falling into an easy rhythm. Her chopping vegetables, him whisking eggs, both of them dancing around each other in the small space with surprising coordination. It felt domestic. Normal. Like they'd done this 1,000 times before. "My father used to make breakfast every Sunday," Rosa said, dicing tomatoes. "He said it was the only meal where we all had to sit down together. No phones, no TV. Just family." "Sounds nice." Michael's voice was carefully neutral, but she heard the longing underneath. "What about your family?" "Sunday breakfasts." His knife stilled against the cutting board. "My family didn't do togetherness. We did business meetings and strategy sessions and lessons in survival." He resumed chopping, movements precise. "My father believed love was weakness. That attachment made you vulnerable. Did you believe him?" "For a long time, yes." He scraped vegetables into the pan, the sizzle filling the silence. Then I watched what that belief did to him. He died alone in a hospital room, surrounded by associates who were already calculating how to divide his territory. No one mourned him. They feared him, respected his power, but no one actually missed him. Rosa's hand found his arm. "That won't be you, won't it?" He turned to face her, expression raw. "I've spent 15 years building walls, Rosa. Keeping people at a distance. Believing connection was liability. And maybe my father was right. Look what happened the one time I let someone in." The words hung heavy with unspoken story. Rosa waited, giving him space to continue or retreat. Michael turned back to the stove, flipping the omelette with practiced ease. "Her name was Isabel. I was 22, newly in charge of my father's business, trying to prove I could lead. She was," he paused, choosing words carefully, "beautiful, charming, said all the right things. Made me believe I could have both, the business and a real relationship." Rosa's stomach tightened, sensing where this was going. She was working for our biggest rival. Feeding them information, undermining deals, setting up an ambush that nearly killed my best friend. His voice was flat, emotionless in the way of old wounds. By the time I discovered the truth, she'd already disappeared with $2 million in cash and enough intelligence to cripple our operations. "Michael, I was a fool. I let my guard down, and people I cared about paid the price." He plated the omelette with mechanical precision. "I swore I'd never make that mistake again. Never let anyone close enough to hurt me or the people depending on me." Rosa moved around the counter, standing in front of him until he had to look at her. "I'm not her. I know that." But his eyes said he was still afraid. "Do you?" She took his hands, holding them firmly. "Because you need to hear this, Michael. I don't want your money. I don't want your power. I don't even want to know your business. I just want," her voice cracked, "I just want you. The man who makes hot chocolate from his grandmother's recipe. Who reads until 3 a.m. Who got on his knees to talk to my 12-year-old sister. That's who I see. That's who I want to be." His hands tightened on hers. "With you, that's who I feel like I can be. But Rosa, you need to understand. My world is dangerous. The people who want to hurt me will look for any weakness. And if they know about you, then we're careful." She stepped closer, eliminating the distance between them. "We're smart. But we don't let fear win. Because that's what she did to you. She made you afraid to trust. Afraid to feel. And if you let that fear control you, then she still wins." Michael stared at her like she'd cracked open something fundamental. "When did you get so wise?" "I had 3 years of being terrified every single day after my parents died. Terrified I'd lose Kira. Terrified I wasn't enough. Terrified the world would break us." She touched his face gently. "But I learned something. Being afraid is exhausting. At some point, you have to decide if you're going to let fear run your life or if you're going to live anyway. And you chose to live. I chose to try." She smiled, though tears threatened. "I chose to show up for my sister every day even when I wanted to hide. I chose to keep going even when it hurt. And I'm choosing you." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Even though you terrify me. Even though this could break my heart. I'm choosing to try." Michael pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. She felt his chest heave with a shuddering breath he'd probably been holding for years. "I don't deserve you," he murmured against her hair. "That's not your choice to make. It's mine." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "And I choose you. Scars, fears, dangerous world and all." He kissed her then, soft and reverent, like she was something holy. When they broke apart, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "I need to tell you something else," he said. "About why I was in the office that night. Why I was there when you fell." Rosa waited, sensing this was important. "I was going through my father's old files. There's a box I keep locked in my safe. Documentation of every deal he made, every person he hurt. I go through it sometimes when I need to remember why I'm trying to build something different." He took a breath. There was a file I'd never opened before. An accident report from 3 years ago. Rosa's blood went cold. "What kind of accident?" "A car accident. Interstate 95. Early morning in December." His eyes held hers, gentle but unflinching. "Your parents, Rosa." "The investigation concluded it was brake failure, but my father's notes suggest otherwise. Suggests the other driver was on someone's payroll. A message to your father about a debt he couldn't pay." The kitchen tilted. Rosa gripped the counter, legs suddenly unable to hold her weight. "No." The word came out strangled. "No, it was an accident. The police said." "The police were paid off." Michael's voice was careful, like he was approaching a wounded animal. "Rosa, I'm so sorry. If I'd known earlier, if I'd looked at that file sooner. Your father." The pieces clicked together with horrifying clarity. "Your father killed my parents. I don't know for certain. The notes are vague. But the timing, the circumstances." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "Rosa, please. I had nothing to do with it. I was already running things differently by then, trying to undo his damage." "You knew." Tears streamed down her face. "You've known for how long? Since that night? Since you looked at that file?" "Since 2 days ago. I found it the night before you fell into my lap. I was trying to figure out if there was any way to trace it, to get you justice, when you—" He stopped, looking wrecked. "I should have told you immediately. I know that. But I was selfish. I wanted—" His voice broke. "I wanted one night where you looked at me like I was worth something instead of the son of the man who destroyed your family." Rosa couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The apartment that had felt safe now felt like a cage. Michael, the man she'd let herself start to care for, carried the blood of her parents' deaths in his veins. "I need to leave." She moved toward the living room where her dress hung drying over a chair. "Rosa, please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" She spun on him, fury and grief warring in her chest. "That your family took everything from me? That while I was working 3 jobs to keep my sister alive, you were living in a penthouse built on blood money? That I was stupid enough to fall for the son of my parents' murderer? I'm not my father." The words exploded out of him. "I've spent 15 years trying to be anything but him. Trying to build something legitimate, something clean. Every day I wake up and try to undo the damage he caused." "But you can't undo this." She grabbed her dress, hands shaking too hard to properly hold it. "You can't bring them back. You can't give me back those years of struggling and drowning and barely surviving." "I know." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I know. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Let me help you. Financially, legally, whatever you need." "I don't want your guilt money." The dress fell from her hands. "I don't want anything from you." Lies. They were lies and they both knew it. But the truth was too painful to voice, that she wanted everything from him. Wanted the impossible future she'd let herself imagine. Wanted the man who'd held her through the storm and made her feel seen for the first time in years. But wanting didn't change facts. Didn't erase history. Didn't bring her parents back. Michael stood frozen, looking like she'd physically struck him. "Tell me how to fix this." "You can't." She picked up her dress again, clutching it to her chest like armor. "Some things can't be fixed. Rosa, I need to go. I need to," her voice broke. "I need to get to my sister." He didn't try to stop her as she changed quickly in the guest room. Didn't protest when she called a ride instead of accepting his offer of Marco driving her home. He just watched with devastated eyes as she walked toward his door. "I'm sorry," he said as her hand touched the doorknob. "I'm so sorry. For my father's sins. For not telling you sooner. For—" his voice cracked. "For making you believe in something that was built on lies." Rosa turned, tears streaming down her face. "The worst part? I don't even think you're lying. I think you really do want to be better. I think you really do care." She took a shuddering breath. "But caring doesn't change what your family took from me. And I don't know if I can ever get past that." "So this is it?" His hands clenched at his sides. "We just walk away?" "I don't know." The honesty cost her. "I don't know anything right now except that I'm standing in the home of the man whose family destroyed mine, and I can't—" a sob caught in her throat. "I can't breathe." She left before he could respond, taking the elevator down with vision blurred by tears. The lobby passed in a haze. The ride home was a blur of grief and confusion and the terrible ache of losing something she'd barely begun to have. When she reached her apartment, Kira was already there. Destiny's mom must have dropped her off early. Her sister took one look at Rosa's face and wrapped her arms around her without a word. And Rosa broke. Sobbed into her baby sister's shoulder, grieving her parents all over again, grieving the future she'd glimpsed with Michael, grieving the girl she'd been who still believed in fairy tales. "What happened?" Kira whispered, holding her tight. "Everything," Rosa choked out. "Everything happened." 3 weeks passed like years. Rosa went through the motions: work, home, Kira, repeat. She'd requested permanent reassignment to the West Wing. Mrs. Loveth approved without question, though her eyes held knowing sympathy. Michael didn't fight it. Didn't summon her. Didn't appear in hallways or dining rooms where she worked. He'd vanished from her life as completely as if that night had never happened. Except it had. And Rosa couldn't stop thinking about it. She was cleaning the main library when Rosa found her, pressing an envelope into her hands. "He asked me to give you this. Said you don't have to read it. But if you do, read it alone." Rosa stared at the envelope like it might bite. Rosa squeezed her shoulder and left. That night, after Kira was asleep, Rosa finally opened it. "Rosa, I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But you deserve the truth, all of it. After I found that file, I hired investigators. Real ones, not my father's people. What they discovered: your father borrowed money from my father to pay for your mother's cancer treatment 5 years before the accident. He'd been making payments faithfully, but then your mother needed experimental treatment not covered by insurance. He asked for more time. My father didn't believe in mercy. He believed in examples. The driver who hit your parents was found dead 2 weeks after the accident. Apparent suicide. Convenient. The officer who filed the report retired early with a sudden influx of cash. I have documentation of everything. I've set up a trust in your and Kira's names. Not guilt money, justice. It's what my father stole from you. The investigator's report is included. Do with it what you will. Press charges against my father's estate. Expose everything. I'll support whatever you choose. I know this doesn't fix anything. Nothing can. But you deserved a family that lived. You deserved parents who watched you graduate, who met your sister's achievements, who grew old together. My father took that from you, and I carry that weight every day. I'm not asking you to forgive me or see me again. I just needed you to know. You were right. I do care. More than I've ever cared about anything. And if spending the rest of my life trying to undo my father's damage is what it takes to honor what we almost had, then that's what I'll do. You deserved better than me. You deserve better than any of this. But for one perfect night, you made me believe I could be the man you saw when you looked at me. Thank you for that gift, Michael. Rosa read it 3 times, tears streaming silently down her face. Then she opened the investigation report. Bank statements. Witness testimonies. Medical bills for treatment her mother never got because her father died trying to buy her more time. Her parents hadn't died in a random accident. They died because they loved each other. Because they fought for life. Because Michael's father saw human desperation as weakness to exploit. But Michael wasn't his father. The realization settled over her slowly. Michael had spent 15 years building something different. Had investigated his own family's crimes. Had given her the evidence that could destroy his reputation, expose his family's legacy, ruin everything he'd built. He'd chosen truth over self-preservation. Chosen her right to know over his own comfort. That took courage. The kind of courage Rosa recognized because she lived it every day. The courage to be better than your circumstances, to choose differently than what was modeled, to fight for who you wanted to be instead of accepting who you were told to be. Rosa picked up her phone. Put it down. Picked it up again. Finally, she texted. Can we talk? Tomorrow. Neutral ground. The park near the estate. Noon. His response came immediately, like he'd been waiting. I'll be there. Thank you. She didn't sleep. Just stared at the ceiling, preparing words that felt impossible but necessary. Because Rosa had been wrong about one thing. Michael wasn't like other men with power. He was terrified. Lonely. Trying desperately to be good in a world that had taught him only cruelty. Just like her. The park was neutral territory. Public, safe, filled with families and joggers and people whose lives hadn't been shattered by mob violence. Michael sat on a bench by the fountain, looking nothing like the powerful man who commanded empires. He wore jeans and a simple gray shirt, no security visible, hands clasped between his knees like he was bracing for impact. Rosa sat beside him, leaving careful space between them. Thank you for coming, he said, not looking at her. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Honesty felt essential. Michael, what your father did was unforgivable. I know. His voice was flat. If you want to go to the police, expose everything, I'll testify. I'll corroborate every detail. Whatever justice looks like for you. Stop. Rosa turned to face him. Just stop. I didn't come here for revenge. He finally looked at her, confusion and hope warring in his expression. Then why? Because I've spent 3 weeks being angry. At your father, at the universe, at you for being born into that family. But mostly, her voice cracked. Mostly at myself for falling for you anyway. Michael went still. Rosa. I fell for you, Michael. Despite everything. Despite knowing it was complicated and dangerous and probably stupid. I fell for the man who held me through a storm and made me feel seen for the first time in years. Tears spilled over. And that terrifies me more than anything your world could throw at me. I fell for you too. The words were raw, unguarded. I fell for your strength and your honesty and the way you love your sister. I fell for how you see people, really see them, instead of just what they can do for you. I fell for... His hand moved toward hers, stopped. I fell for the woman who made me want to be better than I am. You are better. Rosa closed the distance, taking his hand. You investigated your own father. You gave me evidence that could destroy you. You chose truth over protection. That's not the action of a bad man, Michael. That's courage. It's the least I could do. It's everything. Her grip tightened. Do you know how rare that is? How many people would have buried that information, protected themselves? Let me keep living in ignorance. You chose differently. You chose me over your own safety. Michael's eyes were suspiciously bright. I'd choose you over anything. That's the problem. I'm supposed to be smart, strategic, calculating. But with you, all I want is to be honest. To be real. To be human, Rosa finished. You want to be human instead of a legacy. Yes. The word came out broken. But I don't know if I can give you what you deserve. My world is complicated. Dangerous. Even as I try to go legitimate, there are enemies, old debts, people who want revenge for my father's sins. Then we figure it out together. She moved closer, their knees touching. Michael, I'm not naive. I know loving you won't be easy. I know there will be complications and risks and probably moments where I question everything. But I also know, her voice strengthened. I also know that losing you hurts worse than any of those risks. That these 3 weeks without you have been emptier than the 3 years after I lost my parents. That you make me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Rosa, if anything happened to you because of me, then it would be my choice. My risk to take. She cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. Stop protecting me from myself. Stop deciding what I can handle. I'm stronger than you think. Stronger than I think sometimes. And I choose this. I choose you. If you'll have me. But before Michael could respond, a black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. Men poured out. 4 of them, weapons drawn. Get down. Michael shoved Rosa to the ground, covering her body with his as gunshots cracked through the peaceful afternoon. Screams erupted. Families scattered. The shots stopped as quickly as they started. Sirens wailed in the distance. The SUV peeled away, leaving chaos in its wake. Michael pulled back, hands frantically checking Rosa for injuries. Are you hurt? Rosa, talk to me. I'm fine. She looked up at him, at the fear etched into every line of his face, at the way his hands shook as they touched her. Michael, what was that? My past. His voice was hollow. This is what I was trying to protect you from. This is why we can't. No. Rosa grabbed his shirt, pulling him close. Don't you dare use this as an excuse to push me away. Don't you dare. They could have killed you. But they didn't. We're alive. This time. He pulled away, standing. Police cars were arriving. Next time you might not be so lucky. Rosa, I can't be the reason you die. So what? You're just going to walk away? Decide for both of us that this is over. I'm deciding to keep you alive. The words echoed across the park. Even if it kills me, I'm choosing your safety over my happiness. That's what love is. Love is also trust. She stood, facing him despite the chaos around them. Trust that I know the risks. Trust that I'm choosing anyway. Trust that I'm not some fragile thing that needs your protection. Miss, sir, we need statements. A police officer approached, but Michael waved him off with a look that could freeze fire. I'm sorry, Michael said, and the finality in his voice broke something in Rosa's chest. I'm so sorry. But I can't watch you die because of me. He walked away, toward his security team emerging from somewhere, toward the life of paranoia and protection that was his reality. And Rosa stood frozen in a park filled with police and witnesses and the shattered remains of what they'd almost rebuilt. When fear and love collide, what would you choose? Share your thoughts below. 4 days. That's how long Rosa lasted before she broke. She'd tried to move on. Tried to tell herself Michael was right, that safety mattered more than happiness, that loving someone meant letting them go when the risk was too high. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face as he'd covered her body with his own. Saw the terror in his eyes at the thought of losing her. Saw the devastation when he'd walked away. That wasn't a man protecting himself. That was a man so terrified of causing pain that he'd chosen his own suffering instead. And Rosa understood that impulse. She'd spent 3 years making every decision based on what kept Kira safest, what minimized risk, what ensured survival. But somewhere along the way, she'd forgotten. Surviving wasn't the same as living. "You're miserable," Kira said over breakfast. "Like epically miserable. Even more than after the park thing." "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." Kira set down her cereal. "Look, I know I'm 12 and supposedly don't understand adult stuff. But I'm not stupid, Rosa. You're in love with him. And he's in love with you. So why aren't you together?" "It's complicated." "Because of the shooting?" "Because he's trying to protect you." Kira's expression was far too knowing for 12. "That's dumb. Life is dangerous anyway. You could get hit by a bus tomorrow. Should I never let you leave the apartment just in case?" "That's different." "How?" Kira challenged. "You're always telling me to be brave. To not let fear control me. To choose what makes me happy instead of what makes me safe. But you won't take your own advice." The words hit like arrows, each one striking true. "What if something happens to me?" Rosa whispered. "What happens to you? Then I deal with it. Like you dealt with losing Mom and Dad. Like we've dealt with everything else." Kira took her hand. "Rosa, you've been my mom, my sister, my everything for 3 years. You've sacrificed everything for me. But I don't want to be the reason you never get to be happy. That's not fair to either of us." Tears streamed down Rosa's face. "When did you get so smart?" "I learned from the best." Kira squeezed her hand. "Go get him, Rosa. Fight for what you want. Show me that being brave means choosing love even when it's scary." So Rosa did something terrifying. She showed up at the estate during her day off, walked past security that tried to stop her, and marched straight to Michael's office. He was in a meeting. 3 stern-looking men in expensive suits. They all looked up when she burst in. "Out," she said to the men. "Miss Morrison, you can't just—" one protested. "Out." Her voice carried every ounce of determination she possessed. Michael stood slowly, something like hope flickering in his devastated expression. "Gentlemen, we'll reschedule." The men left, shooting confused glances. The door clicked shut. Silence stretched between them. "You walked away," Rosa said, voice shaking. "You decided for both of us. You chose fear over trust. I chose your life over my happiness. And took away my choice." She moved toward him. "You don't get to decide what risks I take, Michael. You don't get to protect me from my own decisions. I'm a grown woman who survived hell and come out fighting. Give me some credit." "Rosa, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." She was close now, close enough to see the shadows under his eyes, the lines of exhaustion. "I understand you're terrified. I understand you think loving me means letting me go. But you're wrong." "Am I?" His voice broke. "Because every night since that park, I've had nightmares about you bleeding out in my arms. About attending your funeral. About explaining to Kira why her sister died because I was selfish enough to want her anyway. And every night since you left, I've felt like I'm drowning." Rosa's hand found his chest, feeling his racing heart. "You don't get it, Michael. Before you, I was just surviving. Going through motions. Keeping my head down. Existing but not living. You made me feel again. You made me want things again. You made me remember what it's like to be alive. I can't be the reason you die. Then be the reason I live. She grabbed his shirt, pulling him close. Be the reason I wake up excited instead of exhausted. Be the reason I believe in more than just survival. Be the reason her voice cracked. Be the reason I remember what happiness feels like. What if I fail you? The question was barely audible. What if despite everything, my world destroys you anyway? Then we'll deal with it together. But Michael, she cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. The only way you truly fail me is by walking away. By deciding I'm not strong enough to handle your world. By choosing fear over trust. That's what breaks me. His hands came up, framing her face like she was something precious. I don't know how to do this. How to love someone without trying to control everything around them. You learn. We both learn. She leaned into his touch. Love isn't about eliminating risk, Michael. It's about facing risk together. About trusting your partner to be strong enough to stand beside you, not behind you. You're terrifying, he whispered. Absolutely terrifying. Good. She smiled through tears. Someone needs to scare some sense into you. He kissed her then, desperate and relieved and full of everything they'd been holding back. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Michael rested his forehead against hers. I can't promise it'll be easy, he said. I don't want easy. I want real. I can't promise there won't be danger. I don't want safety. I want you. I can't promise I won't mess this up spectacularly. Then we'll mess it up together. She kissed him softly. That's what partners do. 6 months later, Rosa stood in Michael's kitchen, their kitchen now, watching sunrise paint the city in shades of gold. The transition hadn't been easy. There'd been complications, security protocols to learn, old enemies to navigate, media attention that made her uncomfortable. But there'd also been unexpected joys. Watching Kira flourish with access to better schools and healthcare, building a life that felt like more than survival, waking up every morning beside someone who saw her, really saw her. Strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind. Michael's chin rested on her shoulder, his morning stubble rough against her cheek. Couldn't sleep, he murmured. Too much thinking. About how different life looks from up here. She leaned back against him. 6 months ago I was invisible. Now I'm seen, he finished. Valued. Loved. It's terrifying, she admitted. Sometimes I wake up convinced it's all a dream. That I'll blink and be back in my tiny apartment, working 3 jobs, invisible again. Then I'll spend every morning reminding you it's real. He turned her in his arms, hands framing her face. You're not invisible, Rosa Morrison. You're the brightest thing in my world. You're the reason I wake up believing I can be better than my father. You're the reason I... Don't you dare leave. The words came out before she could stop them. An echo of that first night, but transformed. No longer a command but a promise. Michael's smile was slow and devastating. Never. He kissed her softly. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me. Good. She kissed him back. Because Kira made me promise to invite you to her marine biology presentation next week. Apparently you're cool now. High praise from a 12-year-old. 13, Rosa corrected. As of yesterday. Which is why I got her this. He pulled a small box from his pocket. I was going to give it to her later, but... Rosa opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet with a small dolphin charm. Simple. Age-appropriate. Thoughtful. Michael. She mentioned loving dolphins last month. I remembered. He shrugged like it was nothing, but Rosa saw the vulnerability in his eyes. The fear that he was overstepping, that his gifts would be rejected, that he'd never truly belong to their small, fierce family. She'll love it, Rosa said, tears threatening. You know that, right? She already loves you. You don't have to keep trying so hard. I want to try hard. You two are. His voice roughened. You're my family now. The family I choose. And I want to be worthy of that. You are worthy. She set down the box, taking both his hands. You've always been worthy. You just needed someone to show you. The moment stretched, comfortable and real. Then Michael pulled back slightly, expression shifting to something nervous. Actually, there's something else I've been meaning to. If you're about to propose, the answer is not yet, Rosa interrupted gently. Not because I don't want to eventually, but because I want us to build this foundation slowly. No rushing. No grand gestures born from fear of losing each other. Just steady growth. Relief flooded his features. Thank God. I was terrified I was moving too fast. You're learning. She kissed him softly. We both are. Learning what? That love isn't about perfect timing or risk-free choices. She pulled him close, resting her head against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat. It's about choosing each other every single day. About building something real instead of something safe. About trusting that we're strong enough to handle whatever comes. Even on the hard days? Especially on the hard days. They stood like that as the sun fully rose, painting their world in new light. Outside, the city woke to another day. Inside, they'd built something that felt like forever. Not perfect, not without risk, but real and chosen and worth every fear they'd faced to get here. Rosa's phone buzzed, a text from Kira. Stop being gross and romantic. I can hear you from my room. Also, I want pancakes. Michael laughed, the sound open and unguarded. Your sister is a menace. She learned from the best. Rosa grinned. Come on. Let's make pancakes. Together. Together, he agreed, and the word felt like a promise. Like a vow. Like the beginning of something neither of them had dared to hope for, but both had found anyway. As they moved around the kitchen, her mixing batter, him setting the table, both of them dancing around each other with practiced ease, Rosa caught their reflection in the window. No longer the invisible maid and the untouchable boss. Just Michael and Rosa. Just two people who'd chosen to be brave enough to love despite the risk. And in that reflection, she finally saw what he'd seen from the beginning. A woman who was always worth seeing. Always worth fighting for. Always worth choosing. Don't you dare leave, she whispered again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was promise. It was home. Never, he whispered back, pulling her close. I'm exactly where I belong. And for the first time in years, maybe in her entire life, Rosa believed it. Believed in happy endings. Believed in love that lasted. Believed that sometimes, the most unlikely falls lead to the softest landings. Sometimes the greatest risk is not taking one at all. What's a leap of faith you've taken that changed your life? We'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.